Hello, my name is Gail Hart, and I'm one of the owner-operators of Harts Desire Miniatures. Harts Desire Miniatures designs, produces, and distributes quarter-inch scale and 1/44 inch house and furniture kits. Our kits are unique because they include everything you need to complete the exterior as well as the interior of your house. Today we're going to be assembling our quarter-inch scale Victorian. Okay, I have the box open now, and the first thing I'd like to note is that we provide a full replacement guarantee on all parts. That means if something's missing, broken, your dog eats it, or you sneeze and send it across the room, it doesn't matter. We will replace it free of charge. So just give us a call or email us and we'll send you out a new piece. The first thing I want you to do is look at the first page of the instructions. There's a list of items that are included in the kits. I'd like you to count your pieces. Also on the back there are diagrams of each piece as well. I'm going to show you some close-up pictures of the pieces so you're aware of what comes in the kit. Each house comes with a base, floors that are etched to resemble hardwood flooring, interior walls. The exterior walls are grooved where the floors slide in. The corners of the walls and roof pieces are tabbed and notched for easy assembly. The pre-cut siding pieces are laser cut using 1/8 inch clapboard siding. The shingles are laser cut in strips. Interior wallpapers are included for each room. Baseboards, cove molding, trims for the edges of the walls and floors, and exterior corner trims. Gingerbread and railings, doors, window casings, window frames, and shutters, along with pre-cut plexiglass and window boxes. Landscaping materials include grass, bushes, the foliage for the window boxes and vines, and 2 bags of flowers, 1 for the window boxes and 1 for the bushes and vines. Each quarter-inch house kit comes with a piece of felt for the bottom of the base in order to avoid scratching the surface it is displayed on. The detailed instructions, complete with step-by-step assembly and diagrams, are included in each kit. Okay, I'm going to go through the paints, tools, and glues that we'll be using on our project today. This is a basic house paint. It's a semi-gloss. These little cans are $3 at Home Depot, and they'll mix them any color you want. You can use a basic craft paint. They're a little heavy in body, and you don't get as much choice in color. So I really like these house paints. We're going to be using a blue and dark green, and I'm going to use white on the trims today. You can also use ivory, whichever you choose. Then the shingles are spray painted black, and I have found that this semi-gloss enamel black matches them really well. So I use this on the roof pieces and on the window boxes and shutters. Then the stain for the floor, I use a Varathane stain and poly mix for that. Glues include tacky glue. I like this little syringe for the smaller parts. Standard wood glue. And then contact cement is what we use on the siding pieces. This is a non-water soluble contact cement. If you use non-water soluble, you need to use it in a well-vented area. It smells terrible. So you can use the water base as well. It doesn't have the odor. And you'll want to pick yourself up a disposable bristle brush to put that on with. Tools include wax paper, double stick tape, masking tape, 2 sizes of sandpaper. This is a 60 and an 800. Scissors, ruler, X-Acto knife or craft knife, pencil. This is a hemostat. I'd like to use this. Needle nose pliers works just as well for reaching into the house with the smaller pieces. For paintbrushes, I use these inexpensive child brushes. They come in a pack like this for like $4 or $5. They have a nice grip to them, and they work just fine. So I really like these child brushes. Okay, I know that the prep work is the most boring part of this project. However, I like to have all of these pieces painted prior to assembly, so while I'm assembling, I don't have to stop and paint the pieces before I can move on to the next step. What I've done here is on all of the floors, I've put 2 coats of stain, sanding with the 800 in between, and I have put 2 coats of white paint on the back of the 2nd and 3rd floor, sanding in between. I want to point out that this is a rejection floor. If you can see this patch here in the wood, I prefer to cut the pieces with that to the back side of the piece rather than the top like this. And this would be a piece that we would reject. If you receive one of these with a patch in it on the floor side, or if a piece has a blemish in it like this and you'd like it replaced, please give us a call or email us and we will send you out a replacement, no charge. Now what I've done here is I've run 1 piece of double stick tape down and then attached all of the pieces that are going to be black on this 1 piece of wax paper, just so that they're touching at the tips here. Then I've done the same with all the pieces that are going to be white, window frames, casings, doors, gingerbread railing, and then this one has the interior and exterior trims. I've run 1 piece of double stick tape here and 1 here to hold those down. The idea with this is that you can then paint your pieces without having to hold on to each one individually. The trick is that you need to remove these pieces off the wax paper before they dry completely, or when they dry completely, all of this excess paint that's here will be stuck to your piece and you'll be scraping that off the edges of your piece. So if you do, 3 or 4 of them and then remove them and set them aside to dry completely. Once you've got 1 coat of paint on everything, then you'll want to sand them. And I just take the 500 and the 800 sandpaper and just gently rub it across like this. That's really all they need. And then get out some fresh pieces of wax paper and put a 2nd coat on everything. The only other pieces that I do prep work for are the roof pieces. For this Victorian, there are a lot of roof pieces, and the roof is the hardest part to do. So I'm going to go into this in more depth when we get to the roof pieces. However, I want you to note at this time that I've painted about a ½ an inch in on all the sides of all these pieces. And then on the exterior side, I've drawn these lines a ½ of an inch apart. These are the lines that you'll follow when we lay down the shingles in strips. These are the lines we'll follow, but I'll go into all of this in more depth when we start putting the roof on to the house. So I'm going to finish up all this and I'll be back and we'll start the fun part, assembling the house. Alright, for the main house assembly, you're going to need all 7 of the exterior walls. I've laid them out here in order as the diagram A shows in the instructions, from A to G. Then you'll need the 3 floors, 3 of the larger interior walls. The 2 smaller walls we'll use later, set those aside. You'll need wood glue and masking tape. I've torn off pieces of masking tape and attached them to my table so I can get at them easily as I'm putting the walls on. Your first step here is that I took the first floor and attached pieces of masking tape anywhere there's going to be a wall attached. begin with wall A. I'm going to dry fit this. You will use glue. Run glue along this bottom ridge. That's where the first floor will fit in. You'll then make sure it's flush with the back of the house. And then pull these pieces of tape up nice and tight. And that's wall A. Wall B, you're going to run glue along this edge between the notches and then along the bottom of wall B. This wall does not sit next to the floor. It sits on top of the first floor, so there is no groove in the bottom. And then you will set it into the holes and tape it to wall A. Wall C only has a groove on the top, not the bottom, because it also sits on top of this floor. So run a little glue here and between these notches of B, and that piece fits on to wall B. Wall D, don't worry if this is square yet. It'll square up on its own. Run a little glue in this ridge, again on the bottom. Run some glue on the edge of C. Fit this in to those notches and pull these pieces up to hold it tight. I'm working backwards here, so not quite as easy. All right. This then is wall E. Run glue along this edge of wall E and in the groove. It will go against this wall and wall D. Tape that together nice and tight. Wall F has grooves at the top and the bottom for floors. It, however, only goes in one way. If you try and put it in upside down, it won't match up to those notches. So it only goes in one way. Run glue along the bottom and between these notches. Attach it nice and tight. And a piece of tape on the inside to hold those two walls together tightly. This is your last wall. Run glue along these notches and the groove at the bottom. This wall will fit flush with the first floor in the back. And that is your main house assembly. Okay? Now before these walls dry, we're going to put in the floors. Second floor first, run glue along all of these edges, just a small amount, not a lot. You can hold the house down on its front side, and this floor will slide in until it's flush on this back side with wall A and wall G. You should also take a piece of tape and tape that wall nice and tight to this front piece. I haven't used enough tape, but you're getting the idea. So that goes in nice and tight. Okay? Then you'll do the same thing with C, or with the third floor. Run glue along all the edges. Drop it in place. Tape it nice and tight to each of the walls. Flush again at this back edge. And then you're ready for the interior walls, room dividers. Okay? And there, the floors are in, flush with the back. These three, you can let this dry completely at this point if you'd like. I'm going to go into putting the interior walls in. Two of these walls, they're all the same height. However, two of them are deeper. This more shallow piece is going to go between this addition and the rest of the main house. And it's going to be flush with the wall in the front. I don't know if you can see that. I'm working upside down and not being able to see here. So, and you'll want to make sure it's square with this wall here. Once it's squared up and you have the glue on it, you'll want to tape it in place so that it dries tightly between the two floors. Okay? The first of these deeper pieces is going to be flush on the first floor, flush with that wall, with this wall C. So you'll glue that one in place there. So it's, and then the last of these wider pieces is going to go between these two single windows. And I like to make it even with this edge here. So you'll want to square that up and put that piece in there, and then again tape it so it stays in. Make sure these walls are squared up and you have all three of those walls in, and you are now ready to let it dry. I'll be back in about 20 or 30 minutes. Mine will be all glued together and we'll be ready to add siding. It's a beautiful spring day here in Minnesota, so I have opened all my windows and doors for this portion. In the winter, I like to do the siding in my bathroom. I have a bath fan in there. But today it's such a beautiful day, I opened all the windows and doors. The house is starting to take shape. I want you to notice that I have taken some white paint and painted the inside edge of all the windows and doors. That the casings have to fit in there, so you don't want too much paint. But it takes away that dark burn mark. And I have all of the interior walls are in place. So we're going to do the siding now. I've laid out all the pieces of siding. Some of the pieces will have a piece of masking tape on the back of them. That's because it doesn't come tall enough to cut a piece this high. So we masking tape them together when we're cutting them. You'll want to take the masking tape off the back. You will need contact cement and a disposable brush. The idea of contact cement is, if you've never worked with it before, it works like rubber cement with paper. It sticks to itself when tacky. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint the complete back of the piece and the complete side of the house. Let them get tacky and then glue them together. I do want to say that there are a couple extra siding pieces. Any extra siding set aside. We're going to use that later to side the sides of the tower. I've already got wall A on mine, so I'm going to work now on wall B. So you want to make sure you cover the entire side of the house. It goes on very smooth. I have cat hair in mine because we have two cats and a dog. The dog will be moving out soon. Try not to get the contact cement in the window openings. Just make sure you're covering the entire piece completely. And it goes on pretty smooth. You just want to make sure that it's on thick enough and it's covering. Next, you're going to paint it on the back of the pieces themselves. You can hear the neighbor dogs barking out there on this beautiful day. More cat hair. We have cat hair everywhere. Okay. Now that we have contact cement on these two pieces and on the house, I'm going to just wave this around a little bit till it feels tacky. And then you will lay it on the house, lining up the windows and doors. Once you have it lined up, press it on nice and firm. And then the second piece, get them as close as you can together, pushing them together as tightly as possible, and press that piece on. Now, your piece may have a seam here or here. We've lined these seams up so because these windows are going to have window frames around them, they're going to have shutters, and there's going to be corner trim, and so there'll be just a small area of that seam that shows in these areas. Also, it gets two coats of paint, so basically you won't see that seam at all. I'm going to go ahead and finish all these other walls, and then I'm going to put 2 coats of blue paint on, letting them dry in between coats, but don't sand between the coats. And then we'll be back and work on the inside. First, I want to talk a little bit about the wallpaper for a house this size. You'll see here that this house requires 7 different papers. Some there are 2 strips for, some there are just 1, and then these are for in the attic. in your instructions, the diagram B, wallpaper placement, shows where each of these wallpapers go in the house. Now if you choose not to use our wallpapers, that's fine too. What I do want to caution you on is, you see how all of these are in a blue scheme? It makes them much more cohesive. If, when you're working in a house this small, you choose to do a yellow paper and then a green and then a red, it will look very patchwork. So in all of our kits, our papers come in the same color scheme. This does not lock you into the color of the house. You can do the outside of the house any color you want, basically. But when you're looking into your house, you want it to look as cohesive as possible. Now, as you can see, I have most of these wallpapers ready to go. I'm going to show you how to fit them and fold them and mark all the window openings, etc. I like to get all of the folding and cutting and all of that done before I get the glue out. Then I don't have a chance of getting glue on anything other than where I want it to be. A lot of these wallpapers do not have an up and down direction. If they do, then what you'll do is put it into the house upside down and then mark the edge here with your pencil. Then you will fold the paper a little bit longer than that mark, and that creates, when you put it in right side up, creates that first inside fold. And it fits in nice and tight. Then I move over to this side, and I'm simply going to crease it slightly with my finger. Try not to get your fingernail through the paper. And when you take it out, then just I like to keep it so that the crease is so this portion is as long as possible. Then when you put it back in, you can see if just stick your finger in there, make sure it fits nice and tight. It does. Now I'm going to take my pencil and mark all the window and door openings from the outside, like this. And the front ones, I'm holding the paper nice and tight with my hand on the inside. And then I'm going to mark each one of these openings. Once those are marked, you'll use your X-Acto knife, cut a little bit larger than that opening, just or to the outside of that mark, because you want the paper not to show from the outside. So it's better to have this opening slightly larger than it needs to be, because you're going to be putting trim around it inside anyway. Don't know if you can see exactly where I'm cutting, but okay, didn't push hard enough on that one. Maybe need a sharper blade. And then when you put that in, you can see from the outside that that lines up pretty good with that window. So you'll want to do that with all of the windows and door openings. Then I want to show you this third floor. I've already cut this one. I drew around this piece, made sure it was right side up, drew around this piece, and I cut that opening in. I also have already done this wall. We're going to do this wall as well. Paper right side up. This paper has little birds on it, so it does have a right side up, or the birds will be standing on their head. Simply mark the wall and where the window goes. And then you'll cut just outside that line like this, because we'll trim that after it dries, and cut in your window. The last thing you're going to want to wallpaper are these two little room dividers that go on the sides of the tower wall. Watch the direction of the paper, and you can glue, simply put glue on the wood and glue one side, let it dry, cut it out, and then glue the other side and let it dry, cut it out for both of these pieces ahead of time. Before you put the roof on, it'll be much easier. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my glue, and then we'll glue a piece in. I've thinned out some tacky glue here now. It doesn't have to be real thin. Obviously it's not dripping off the paintbrush. I'm going to use a disposable brush because I have a whole bunch of them laying around. I've already glued in most of these wallpapers, and I've let them dry and trimmed the edges off. So I'm going to do this room here now that we cut earlier. I like to paint the wall rather than the wallpaper because I don't like to work with wet paper. So what I'm going to do here is put a generous coat of glue here on the wall. The wall is wood, so it will absorb some of the glue. So just put a generous amount on. Make sure you get around the edges. Hard to do when I'm working upside down. Got a little on the floor there. And I'll do this wall. Get my head in the way, I suppose. There we go. Nice generous coat of glue. And then we're going to take this piece that we've already got the doors and windows cut out of. Push it in nice and tight to the corner. Make sure the doors and windows line up. Push it up tight next to the edge here. And that's it. The wallpaper is in. Now around these edges, you might need to put a little bit more glue around those edges. But you'll wait until it dries. Then you can take your X-Acto knife. You'll need a sharp X-Acto knife. And just trim it off. Cuts off pretty easy. Like that. And you'll do that around all the edges. Now I did not finish this room here yet. I want to point out that when you have two strips of paper, you want them to try not to see the seam. The first strip I laid, and it comes up to the edge here on this wall. That you'll glue down. So that's glued in. And the second piece then actually starts in that corner. And we'll go around the corner and up this wall. This room also had 2 strips, and it also has the seam in that back corner. That's how I avoid seeing the seams after I'm done. Other item I wanted to point out are these walls. I have both of those done now on both sides. And those will be the interior walls here in the attic. And that's it for the wallpaper. So the next step is one of my favorite steps. I'll be back and we'll start the trims. Like I said, the trim is one of my favorite parts of the project because it really starts to give the house a finished look to it. Now I've done some of the windows here. We're going to do the trims in several stages. First, we're going to do windows and doors. Diagram D, window assembly, shows you in your instructions what you're going to need and how to assemble the windows. I've laid out here, you will need 2 window casings, 2 window frames, and a piece of plexiglass for each single window. These are the doors. I've painted some of the paneling on the door blue. You can also paint a little gold handle if you'd like. And then there are 2 pieces of plexiglass for the doors. Plexiglass has a film, and that film will come off. It is on both sides. Then you will take your door and put a little glue in the opening and put your plexiglass in that hole. While that dries, we're going to work on the windows. I'm going to do this window right here. It's very important that there is nothing, no paint built up in the corners, and there's no wallpaper around the opening here, because these casings are fit tight to go in. If you need to sand the edges a little, use your 800 and sand gently. The first casing will go in flush with the inside wall. Put a little bit of glue around the corners here. And then you've got a piece of plexiglass. Again, take the film off the plexiglass. Then fit the piece of plexiglass into that opening. Push it down in so you have room on this side then, and put your other casing in. Flush with the siding. Now we put the frames on. Put glue on here like this. And then you put your window in, the window frame, center that on your window. And for the outside, I usually put a little piece of tape on just to hold it there so it doesn't get knocked out of place while it's drying. And then you'll put the other frame on the inside. And do not masking tape the inside, because the masking tape, when you pull it off, will tear the wallpaper. So don't masking tape that. If it's easier for you to put the glue around the edge of the window, you can do that rather than on the piece itself. Now this window was obviously easy to do, easy to reach, not a problem. These windows here on the sides and in here, they're going to be a little tougher to do. But as long as there is no wallpaper in the way, there's no built up glue or anything in the way, then they should go in fairly easy as well. I have now, since I put these in, I have taken a small paintbrush with some white paint and just painted around the edge where the casing and frame come together. It just gives it a little bit more of a finished look. Then once your door is dry, you're going to do the same thing with your door. you're going to put one facing out, flush with the siding, and one facing in, flush with the siding, and then you're going to put framing around it. That's all there is to the windows and doors. When you're doing the baseboard, the first piece you're going to want to measure is the piece that is against, that goes across the front. So I usually just take a pencil and mark the length of that piece, and then it cuts with a scissor. So you can cut that and then fit it in. If it's a little touch long and doesn't lay flat, trim it off a little bit until it does. And then I just use my glue gun, lay that piece in. You can run glue on the inside of the house if you prefer. I do that sometimes. And then you do the side walls. Just stick the piece in, draw your line, and cut that off. And that's all there is to the baseboard. Very simple. Don't have to miter anything. Don't have to do anything like that. And there you go. The next step will be the cove molding. The cove molding, the first piece that goes into the cove molding is also that back edge. I'm going to show you. I like to work on the house upside down, and I'm going to pretend this is my ceiling. That first piece goes against that front wall like that. Now this wall, if you just butt those together, they're not going to fit together, two pieces like this. So what you're going to want to do is take this piece, and because the top needs to be longer than the bottom edge here, I'm going to just cut a little 45-degree angle, and then when you put that next piece in, they will butt up next to each other and fit. So you actually only have to miter that side wall. And I have completed this back living room section. Once the baseboards and the cove moldings are done, you can take the same material you used for the baseboards and run one piece up the wall, edge of the wall here. That will hide these rough edges and trim those off. Now you will also, at this time, before putting the roof on, you want to do the baseboards on the third floor. And I'll just run glue along that edge. And when it dries, I'll trim the edge. So that's the baseboards, cove moldings, windows, and doors. The last of the trims, these corner trims, they're already cut a good length for the longer corners. This one and this and here and here. This shorter corner, you'll need to cut one in half to fit there. And once again, I glue these on and trim when they're dry. You have a choice here of using the tacky glue on these corners, or I've used hot glue. I'm going to put the tacky glue on. They cover the corners, and if you're using the tacky, you do need to tape them in place until they dry completely. And you will put those on all of the outside corners. When they dry, we cut this off with an X-Acto knife. So there really is no measuring or anything there, just glue them on. Now, for the inside corner, here at the front porch, you'll notice, by the way, I put 2 coats of white paint on the front porch. That piece I'm not going to glue on now. I wait to glue these on until the roof is on, because the roof is going to be at an angle here. And I want to make sure I get that angle correct once the roof is on. So I don't glue these on at this time. Next step, trim everything off, touch up the paint, and we'll put the roof on. Okay, I finished all the trims on the inside, and now we're going to do the roof. And I said earlier, the roof for this house is the most complicated because there are 9 pieces. You are not going to need the piece for the porch yet, so I'm going to set that aside. I've already finished the roof on the addition. This piece comes with tabs and notches, so it's very easy. You simply glue it together and run a little bit of glue, put those together, put some tape on, and then set it on the house without glue. Set it on the house and run a piece of tape to hold that angle in while it dries. Once that dries, then you can glue it to the house. It's much easier once that top edge is dry. I'm going to go into more depth, but that's the easiest portion of the roof to put on. So I've already done that. The next step is there are 4 pieces. The 2 that go across here and the 2 that go across here need to be mitered. They don't get notched and tabbed because this angle is too sharp for the notches and tabs. They do need to be, the top edges of these pieces right here need to be mitered. So I have one here. This is actually very simple to do. Use the 60 grit sandpaper and simply rub them with a little bit of elbow grease until that you get that angle in. Keeping in mind you want that angle to be bigger than 40, or it's smaller than 45 degrees. So you need to hold your piece at a lower angle in order to get that in. And just make sure that that angle is all the way across the whole piece. That way, when these 2 pieces go together, they'll come together at the top. It took me about 15 minutes to miter these 4 pieces, so it's really very simple to do. Once those are mitered, these 2 I've already glued together. I ran glue along that mitered edge. I set them on top of here, and I made sure they were down tight, and I ran this piece of tape across here. That holds this angle in while this top edge dries. Then set this piece aside while that angle dries. Set the house aside, and I want to wallpaper the inside of these pieces before they go on the house. So I glued these 2 wall pieces in, making sure they were flush with this outside edge of the tower, and that this piece slid down over the top of them. I held that piece on nice and tight. You'll notice how it fits good and tight down here. I have mitered, actually. I've simply sanded this top edge of the siding slightly, for this to sit flush on there. Then I took a pencil and I marked this edge of the overhang and bottom edge of the overhang. And then I cut a piece of wallpaper to fit there. Leave it overhang on this side because you will need that to fold over once the whole roof is on. Let that dry. When you wallpaper this piece, you don't want to get glue on the front of the wallpaper. So what I've done is I took a piece of wallpaper and folded the top edge down about 1/4 inch like this, and that piece then would fit this side and overlap onto the other wall. Then I cut the other piece for this wall. I put glue on both sides at the same time. Then I pushed this piece up tight. I took the second piece and put a small amount of glue along the top edge so it would lay on top of that, and the rest already had glue on it. That avoids getting glue on the front of the wallpaper. So once that wallpaper dried, and then I trimmed these two edges as well. So this piece of roof is all ready to go on. I have already prepped the house. I angled here so the roof would fit down tight. I angled here slightly. That's the top edge of the siding, is all that you're actually angling. I do want to point out at this point, once this roof was on, I put this corner trim on. You can wait to put this corner trim on until the roof is on. However, it's easier to get this piece on if all you're doing is trimming it. I cut it up slightly here and cut that angle in, and then I was able to glue that on and let it dry. Then it also has to be angled slightly at the top for this roof to fit. Once you have this trim piece on, you have this roof ready to go. All you need to do is run a little bit of glue here and here, not too much. You don't want it to ooze out onto this wallpaper here, so not a lot. Put glue here, here, and on both of these edges. This roof will then sit down tightly on top. Make sure when you look at the front of it, it's fitting down tight to the top, and that it's flush at the back, to this back wall. And then, just as a double check to make sure that it's on straight, take a look across this edge of the siding and use the siding as your guide to make sure that that is on straight. Then you will tape it down tight to the house here, and you'll want to make sure that you tape it tightly across the front. So run a piece of tape from here across to here and down here. Once all the tape is on, do a quick double check to make sure it's straight, flush at the back, and following the siding line. Once this piece is dry, you will already have these two pieces taped together as I did with these. These will already be taped together, wallpaper trimmed. Then you will glue these two pieces on and follow the siding down here. Once this is on, you will notice that the wallpaper is showing on both sides of this tower. That is where these little pieces of siding come in. These little pieces of siding will be cut to fit that angle. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get this whole roof on. I'm going to cut these to fit, get those glued on, paint them, and then I will take the corner trim, as I did here, and I will run it up the sides of this tower. Once that corner trim's on, then this tower piece goes on. This tower piece has the notches and tabs again, so it does not get mitered at the top. And you'll see then that once the whole roof is on, it's already wallpapered, and all you need to do is run your baseboards on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that finished, and then I'll be back and we'll put shingles on. Before we get started, I wanted to show you that I have all of the floor trims on now. That's the same material we used for the base. I've also touched up all of the cut ends of everything. The cove molding. I want to show you this room here. If you can see that cove molding in the back there, that's where the front wall met the side wall. So I wanted to show you how I trimmed that edge up with a piece of cove molding. Now we'll get started on the shingles. Okay, we're ready to start shingling, and you remember during the prep portion I had you draw lines 1/4 of an inch apart, starting at the bottom and working your way up. These are your shingle lines. The shingles come in strips, and I've already finished shingling this addition. So one thing, note in the instructions that when you're shingling, you don't want the line between the shingles to match up all the way up the house. You want to vary your shingles back and forth a little so that line isn't completely, you're straight all the way up the house. Now I finished this wall, and I did this wall. I like to do this wall first. It's very simple, very easy. I start at this side, and the first row is a full shingle, and then half a shingle, and then a full shingle, and half a shingle, and that keeps that line from showing up. And then I trim this with a scissor. From these long strips, you end up then with these smaller strips that we'll use on the rest of the house here. When you start this front area, start with this wall first. Very similar to the baseboard and cove molding. It will hide the joint a little better here if you put this piece on first. Now, I've shingled all the way up this side, and for this angle, I held the shingle here so that it was right on the line, and the lines between the shingles are then not lining up. So you can then, with just a scissor, trim that marked angle and make sure the piece fits. You can put these shingles on with tacky glue, but you cannot go one piece after another, after another, after another. You have to give them a second to dry between each one, or they'll start to slide on your roof. So I'm going to use some hot glue. I have this nice little hot glue gun that stands up by itself. It's supposed to be battery operated as well, but it doesn't heat up as well on the battery, and you need it really hot to hold these shingles. So I'm going to run a little hot glue right here, and then before that hot glue dries, get that shingle in place. And that's all there is to it. You just work your way all the way up the house. Then you'll do these. And I've started back here. It's very difficult to use a scissor to cut this edge. So use this edge as your starting point so you can trim the other edge off. And don't use a new scissor. Use an old scissor because this will ruin a scissor very quickly. Now, the last point I wanted to show you is that once you get your roof to this stage, then you cap it off. In the kit are 3 strips of shingles that have no cut in them. These you'll fold in half, and then I'm going to run a little hot glue right down the middle of it and set it right on there. That's your cap. Once that's dry, I can just take my scissor and trim off the edge. Like that. We will take the black enamel paint and touch up all of these edges where they've been cut, any spots that look like they need additional attention. I'm going to show you this little piece I've cut. When you're working in this area right here, it's hard to get started because it's such a small area. I'll grab hold of it with my knife like this. And tacky glue works good in this little area because it's hard to get the hot glue in. And then I'll just set this piece in. Work your way up the rest of the house. So I'm going to finish shingling all of this. And as you can see, all my exterior trims are on. I put these 2 corner trims on before the roof went on. And I've also glued on all the shutters and window boxes. Just use tacky glue on these. I use a fair amount of glue on these and then stick them down. And now we are ready to finish the house, and then we put it on the base. So I'm going to show you the base here real quick before I finish the rest of the house. When you're ready to put the base on, after it's shingled, line the house up on your base and draw around it with a pencil. And then mark where this front sidewalk is going to go. You'll then put 2 coats of green paint on, sanding between, and 2 coats of white paint on, sanding between. You will also go all the way around the edges of your board and about 1/2 inch in on the bottom. We'll be putting felt on the bottom. So you can finish up your shingling, get your base ready, and then we'll be ready to finish it up. I have the base on now, and what I've done is on the bottom of the house I ran a good amount of wood glue all the way around the edges. I then taped it down tightly back here to the base, and I weighted it down with heavy cans of paint or books. Weight it down really good because this base will warp a little bit if it's not weighted down real well. And then let it dry completely. Then you'll want to put these railings on. There are little notches in the first floor where this railing fits in. Glue it to the corner trims, glue it to each other and tape it and let it dry, and then glue one of these roof brackets to the top of this side piece. Once all of this is dry, you glue the other bracket to the back of this roof piece, and I'm going to tip the house a little bit here. You want to follow the siding in the front here, so you're sure that it's running straight. There are notches in the back of the roof to fit where the trim goes. But right here, on that edge of the trim, you need to take your pencil and mark the top and bottom of the roof once you know it's sitting on there straight. And then, with your X-Acto knife, cut that little notch out. Then the roof will fit on with those little notches. Now, I told you to glue on all your window boxes. You shouldn't have these two window boxes on yet. Once this is straight, following the siding, then put glue on it and leave it lay on its back until that's good and dry. Once that's good and dry, you'll shingle this, touch up any of the paint. I touched up the paint on these trims. Also, you'll notice I have all of these gingerbread trims on. Once again, you tip the house upside down, run glue on the edge of the gingerbread and set it in there and hold it. Try not to tape it because you could break these little tips off, but hold it until they're fairly dry. And those go on the addition and the ends. So now I am going to glue the roof piece on. I'll shingle it, touch all the paints up, and then we landscape. We're ready to cut the felt to fit. So I've already cut mine about 1/8 of an inch around all the edges. Don't glue it on yet, but have it ready and cut. Then I've done this side of the house. Now the first step to landscaping will be the grass. I thinned out some tacky glue and I'm going to paint that on. Put it on nice and thick. You also want to make sure that you put your tacky glue on the sides as well, on these edges, and this back edge here on the side of the house. With the tacky glue on, you'll take your bag of grass and shake it out on top of your tacky glue. Spread it out a little bit. Just lightly shake it. Make sure you've got it along all the edges. And then I'm going to just press this down with the wax paper a little bit so that I'm sure it's on there nice. And then you can just tap it on your table. And that's it for the grass. The next step are bushes. You get a bag of bushes and you'll need to tear some to fit them in underneath the windows. You'll want them lower under the windows so they don't get in the way of that window box. I like to put tall ones at the corners. I also like to put a bush hedge kind of here, and I like a little bush here in the corner. So just tear these until you think they're going to fit the way you want them to. I'll glue this one down back here in the back. I use hot glue for this. You can also use tacky. So, and all those bushes then, I'll put bushes all along here. There'll be a tall one at each corner, and they'll go around here. And then I'll put one right here in the middle of the yard, like that. Then you'll want to do all of the window boxes like this. take your tacky glue, run a little bit of tacky glue on the window box like this. Take your foliage and tear a piece off, set it on that window box, get it stuck. You really can't make a mistake with this. And the foliage will drop some of this excess when you're tearing it. Some of the foliage comes off. So I like to just use it to plump up the window box a little bit. You have to let these window boxes dry before you put the flowers on them, or when you touch the tacky glue to them, they'll just come right off the house. So I've already got these dried, and I'm going to put a little bit of tacky on the top of there. Just spot it a little bit. And then the bag of colored flowers we're going to use on the window boxes. I just pour a little out on my wax paper. Take a pinch, sprinkle it over the window box, and when that dries, your window boxes will look like this. When you're doing the little white flowers on bushes, it's the same process. Simply dot the bush with tacky glue and use your white flowers on any of the bushes. I don't like to do all the bushes, but I will do these out in the middle of the yard. And any vines that run up your house, I put one here on the corner. Any of those vines, you will also just touch with the tacky a little bit, and then you can sprinkle some of the white flowers on those also. And that will take care of all the landscaping. Tip the house over, paint on your tacky glue again, nice and thick, over the whole base up to about 1/8 of an inch in, and then put your piece of felt on the bottom. Once your felt is on and all your landscaping is finished, I will actually take the house into the bathroom and spray it. Don't spray the inside of your house, only spray the landscaping and the roof part. I have been told that if you spray it with hairspray actually attracts the dust. So you don't want to use hairspray on it. I use this clear matte lacquer spray, and it smells really bad again. So you don't want to do it in the house, but I will spray all the landscaping, the roof, and all the window boxes. This just firms them up and keeps them from flaking off. Once you've sprayed it, your house is done. There's only one step left to do. Now that your Victorian is finished, you'll want to add it to your village. We currently carry 6 1/4-inch scale houses and 5 1/44 inch. The Farm, the Summer, Tudor, Colonial, Victorian, and of course no village would be complete without a store. Our store comes with 2 staircases leading up to the 2nd and 3rd floor living areas. The 1/44 inch houses come complete with all the same materials as our 1/4-inch scale. In setting up your village, remember to add turntables so everyone can enjoy the inside as well as the outside. And of course, you'll want to furnish your house. We carry 4 styles of furniture in both the 1/4-inch scale and 1/44 inch. Our furniture kits are sold by room and include instructions for upholstery and bedding. If you are interested in purchasing one of our house kits, please look through our vendor list and note that for our northern neighbors, we do have a vendor in Canada as well. Thank you for watching and have fun!